F for leaf and stone. You picked the wrong camping spot, bitches. Spray them!
F for leaf and stone. You picked the wrong camping spot, bitches. Spray them!
Hello and welcome. My name is Shamsuddin and this video is a tutorial on how to create lip sync in Blender using the Lip Meter add-on. There's a link in the description that will direct you to the add-on on Gumroad. Okay, so I'm going to start by installing the add-on. So I'll go to Edit, then Preferences, then I'll select this add-ons tab, then go to Install. I'll maximize this window and then locate the zip file, select it, and then finally click the Install add-on. Now I will check this box to enable the add-on and then close the preferences window. So now we should have this Lip Meter tool on the side tab of the viewport. If you have this panel collapsed, clicking it should expand that. Here in the tools panel is the name of the armature in the scene, G8M Rig. And this character is a Genesis figure from DAZ Studios. I tend to use DAZ figures in my workflow for creating stylized character. I also used a different add-on called the Rig Genesis add-on, which I developed to rig the Genesis figures from DAZ. Here, like I said, is the armature in the scene, but what is of interest to us is the tab right below it. Clicking it should display a list of meshes that are parented to the armature. And the reason you might want to look into this is because sometimes you might have to assist the tool in knowing what mesh you want to create the lip sync on. You can see the mesh here, which is the character's head, is of course where we want to have the lip sync. Up here is the name of the selected object, which is soldier. And since we have all these other meshes like the braids, shirt, body armor, and so on, so there are times when the tool might need you to tell it on which of these meshes to create the lip sync on. Now, before creating a controller, there's one very crucial thing we'll have to do, and that is for those whose character's head is made up of all these different separated parts, like the brows, almost especially the meshes around the mouth, such as the mustache and the beard. You want to always join all these different meshes to the main head. Only then can you really have a good lip sync. So let's do just that. I will zoom in and select the beard, the side beard, and the mustache, include the brows as well, the hair, and the braids, and the last one, the selection, is the head. And then I'll press Ctrl J to join all those meshes together. Okay, so one final thing I'd like to draw attention to before creating controllers is by coming down here in the Object Data panel. Currently, I don't have any shape key created, but I understand that some users might have created shape keys to drive their characters. So there is now a way for the tool to create controllers for these shape keys. So let's do that real quick. When I go to the object data properties, we shall see that the shape key was created. Now I'll rename the shape key here. I'll call this first one mouth open and the second one tongue out. Now when I select the shape key and click on this pin button here, and that should apply the shape key on the character. But for shape keys you don't want controllers for, you should disable it here by muting it. And of course, for those you want controllers for, you can just leave it as it is and unmuted. Alright, so now I'll go ahead and select create controllers in my Lip Meter panel. So this usually takes some seconds. Let's give it a bit of time. Now that the controllers are created, when I zoom out, you should see we have all these controllers. So the first 8 controllers, which are AHJ, BMP, CDE, FV, IR, LTH, QUW, and OY. And these are all the essential controllers that will be needed for the lip sync. And above OY is the controller for the existing shape keys you have. So here in the panel, you can see it's saying scale controllers for effects. That is how to simply get the controllers to drive the shape key. Here we have the scale tool, which was selected right here from the tool menu. So clicking anywhere within this white circle and dragging away will have the controller take effect, and right clicking of course cancels that. You can also position the controller by pressing G on the keyboard and placing it anywhere in your scene. And so let's bring this close to the mouth. And anytime you move a controller, you want to come to the controller settings and click the pin button here to pin the controller to the newly moved position, so that when you reset your movement with Alt G, the controller remains there. You see when I move this controller without pinning it and then press Alt G, you'll see it returns to its previous position. You can also scale the controllers here in the panel. It can also be offset. You can also rename it here. Let's just rename this to open mouth. After renaming it, it's going to allow you to update the name of the custom shape. We have open mouth, but you can see the controller still reads mouth open. But once I update by clicking this button, it should now reflect on the controller. And if you want a new controller, just click the new button here in the panel. And you can see it always references the last controller when creating a new controller. We can remove them by first selecting and then clicking remove on the panel. Alright, so now we are left with the essential controllers for the lip sync. Nothing happens when I scale this controller, and that is because we've not assigned any shape key to the controller. So I'll start with AHJ, and to assign shape keys, I will go to the controller settings where it says modify figure. I will click select mode and then choosing what mode to modify the figure in. Usually I like to start with pose mode and then later refine it in sculpt mode. So I'll select pose mode now, and you can see almost immediately it changes the shading to random shading, gives it all this color. And this is just to let you know when you are modifying the figure so you don't get confused as to posing or modifying. Alright, now I'm going to shape the figure's mouth pronouncing the letter A. I will advise you look at a mirror or use the front camera of your phone to study how your mouth pronounces these letters. One more thing I'll do before posing the figure is to have the transform orientation to normal and also turn x-axis mirror. So now I'll shape the character's mouth to pronounce these letters. And you can always change the shading up here in the shading option if there is any you would prefer to work in. Okay, so when you are satisfied with the shape, you can then go to the panel and just click apply, and that returns us to the previous shading. And so now when I scale the controller, we can now see how the character is making efforts at pronouncing A. Okay, so now I'll do the same for the rest of the controllers, but I'm going to have it in time lapse. Alright, so now that I'm done modifying all of these and controllers in pose mode. I'm going to now refine some of them in sculpt mode. But I'll first select all of these bones of the face and then press H to hide those, since I won't be needing them in sculpt mode. Down here in the lip meter panel, it's a library for the controllers. They are called pose markers. I could just select one of the pose marker and then click the apply button here to see the effect. And let's just cycle through all the markers and see their shapes. So this is A, B, C, F, I, L, Q, and O. And this button here resets the controllers. I think I am okay with AHJ, but I think I might need to refine BMP. And to do that, I'll modify, of course, in sculpt mode. Now, before I start sculpting, I'm going to go to face set up here and then select initialize face set by material, because already the character have all these different materials for all these different parts of the head. So now I'm going to just hide the face, the lips, and the mustache. I'll do that by pressing Shift H with the mouse over the mustache, Shift H on the lips, and again Shift H on the face. Now I'll go to mask up here, then fill mask to mask everything. Now I'll press Alt H to unhide my hidden parts. So now I know when I sculpt, only the face, lips, and the mustache are affected. Now I'll expand these brushes here, then select the smooth brush, then change the strength to 0.3, and now I'll start sculpting on regions around the mouth to refine the shape, but again in time lapse. Okay, so let's go through the shapes one more time. So this is A, B, C, F, I, L, Q, and O. Alright, so now we're going to actually start syncing the character's lip to an audio file. I'm going to start by duplicating the layout workspace up here, then right click and select duplicate. I'll double click the duplicated workspace and rename it to lip sync. Now I'll go down to the timeline and drag this down, and I need these buttons. Alright, so now I'll split the screen by going to the edge here and dragging down. I'll then change this to dope sheet. I'll split the window again and then change it to video sequencer. And again, I'll split by dragging to the left now. Then I press N to hide the properties panel and T to hide the tool panel. Now I'll zoom in to focus on my controllers, and that's in front view so that I have them there at all time. In the main viewport, I'll just turn off the overlay for better viewing of the character. Next thing I'm going to do now is import an audio file, but first I'll make sure I have my cursor at frame 1 and then clicking the previous button. Now I'll go to add in the video sequencer and select a movie. Of course, you can select sound if you intend using an audio file, but I'm using a movie clip, so select that. And so here in my folder, this is a short clip I cut from the Blender and recent movie, Fright. So I'll select it and then click add movie strip. Now I'll just scroll the mouse wheel to have the whole strip visible. I'll then come to the end of the strip here. You can see it's around 260 frames, so I'll just make the end frame 260. But before I play the clip, I'll first go to the playback option here. I'll then have this as sync to audio, and then also enable scrubbing so that when I scrub on the timeline, we get to hear the audio. Okay, now with the mouse over the video sequencer, I'll press Ctrl Space to maximize that screen. So the blue strip here is the video file, which we are not going to need. So I'll press H to hide that. And the green strip here is the audio file. I'll select it and then press N for the properties panel and go to display waveforms here and enable that. So now I'll click and hold the end of this scroll bar and drag it all the way down so that it makes the waveform bigger. And then I'll just pull this up until I have the waveform visible. Now I'm going to quickly create markers on the timeline. It's not really an important step to do, but it is sometimes helpful to label the wordings in the audio. And to do that, I'll first listen to the audio, press space to play. So now I'm going to only create markers for this length of the audio and not the entire audio. These spikes here will be our concern. Where it peaks are usually the words. So this is a word and this is another word. This is another. Okay, so the audio we just listened to is right foot, left foot, leaf, and stone. Now I will label this point, which is right. So I'll press M to place the marker and then Ctrl M to rename it. Then I'll call this right. Then select this point, then M, then Ctrl M, and I'll call this foot. So I'll just do the same for the rest of the audio. I'll end the markers here and then play the audio. You want to have your eyes on the markers down here when I press play. Right foot, left foot, leaf, and stone. Alright, so let's go back to the previous window. And let me move this audio strip up to visibility. So to start syncing the lip to the audio, I'm going to first create one more controller. So I'll go to the lip meter panel and then expand the controller settings. But before creating a new controller, I'll first enable Add to Pose library. This is to add a pose marker for the new controller to this list because I'm going to be using it as my default expression. So with this enabled, I can now press New. Now we should see the pose marker for the new controller is added into the library. Now I'll rename it here to default, and remember to always update when you rename a controller. So now you can see we also have defaults in the library. So the reason for this added controller is, after animating the lip sync on this character, it will be possible to then transfer the data to a different character, that has a similar setup as this. Alright, so now still in the library, I'll enable this option here. And what this does is kind of tells the library what controller is selected so that it makes it the active pose marker. And for example, when I select CDE, you can see it's active here. And when I select AHJ, it makes that active as well. And so ensure to have that enabled. One final thing I'll do here in the library is add this apply button to the quick favorite. And to do that, I'll just right click and select add to quick favorite. So now when I press Q anywhere on the screen, I can easily apply the controller. Let me show you this by selecting default and then press Q and apply that. Okay, so with that done, we can now collapse the library and also the controller settings. So now to start creating the animation, I'll first go back to frame 1, then go to keying. Remember the controllers are being scaled for effect, so I'll set this active keying to scale, and then I'll also turn on auto keying. One more thing we should do is give the animation a name. So remember, this is the action editor in the dope sheet, so have that as action editor, and then go to new here and click that to have a new action. I'll rename it to Sprite Fright. Also make sure you have this enabled, which is the fake user, so that Blender remembers the animation when next you open the file. Alright, so let's start creating the animation. I'll start by positioning the cursor to this point where it says right. So right is IR. Select that, then press Q and then apply. Now I'm going to go back 3 frames because the animation needs to come from a default before saying right. So I'll just go back 3 frames and now select default and then Q and apply that. So I think it's good practice to ensure the spacing between your keyframes is at least 3 frames. It's a very crucial thing to keep in mind because sometimes when it's less than 3, it tends to be snappy and pops in a disturbing fashion. Okay, so now let's continue. The from foot starts around here. So I'll select FV, then Q and apply that. Remember, we always want to have at least 3 frames. So this is 1, 2, and it's okay to have 1 here. So foot is like QUW. Now I'll continue doing this for the rest of the audio, but in time lapse. So with that done now, I'll zoom out and then maybe bring my end frame to about 75 since that is only the length I've worked. I'll go to the first frame and play it. Okay, sometimes the viewport engine can be laggy or skips some frames, to catch up with audio. So it's not always advisable to rely on the viewport unless of course you have a really fast computer. But there's a fast way of rendering the animation for real-time preview, and to do that I'll just go to output window here, select a folder to save the render. Now I'll scroll down and then change this file format to FFmpeg video. Then I'll expand encoding, scroll down, change the container to MPEG, and then go to audio codec, have this as MP3. Okay, so now I will have the character in the viewport at a good angle, and then go to view, then select viewport render animation. So we'll wait for this to render. Okay, so now I'm going to locate my file in my Windows Explorer and then play the animation. Alright, so that's the animation. Okay, so now back in Blender, here is the image editor. So you want to switch back to the viewport. Alright, so there are several things I could do with the controllers. I could add blinks and several expressions. So I'm going to do that in the rest of the video. I'm going to show you how I added eye blinks and furrow to make the brows kind of frown, and also how to slightly move the mouth to the side and all of that. So I'm going to play that in time lapse. If you find this video helpful, remember to give it a like, and if you have any questions, you can leave that in the comment section or just send me an email. I have that in the description. Alright, that will be all. Till next time, thanks for your time and thanks for watching.
You picked the wrong camping spot, bitches. Spray them! F for leaf and stone. You picked the wrong camping spot, bitches. Spray them!